This is a story of a friend who never spoke a word, who never moved from its place, but it listened year after year and carried the weight of someone's heart until its very last breath. In a small forgotten village where time seemed to work instead of run, there stood an old peepal tree at the edge of the square. Its roots spread deep into the earth, its branches wide into the sky. The bark was rough and cracked, as if it had heard 1,000 stories and kept them all locked inside. To the villagers, it was just a tree, a place to tie the cattle, a shade to rest for a moment before moving on. But to one little girl, Binni, it was so much more. Binni had lost her mother when she was barely old enough to remember her face. Her father, buried under work and grief, hardly spoke. The world around her was loud with people, but quiet for her heart. And so, she found a friend, not in a person, but in that old peepal tree. She would sit under it for hours, talking, crying, whispering her little secrets. She carved her name into its bark with a tiny knife. She tied colored threads around its branches, promising it she would always come back. And in her mind, the tree was alive in a way no one else could see. On rainy days, one branch seemed to lean just a little more, sheltering her from the downpour. On summer afternoon, its leaves would sway gently, shading her from the burning sun. Once, when she tripped and fell while playing, she swore she felt the soft rustle of its leaves, almost like it was telling her, "Are you okay?" It was her listener, her comfort, her home. Years passed, and the little girl's visit became the tree's favorite hours. On days she was happy, Binni would sing to it, making up silly songs. The tree's leaves would dance along in the wind as if it was clapping for her. On the days she was sad, she would cry quietly into its rough bark. She would wrap her arms around its trunk, and the tree in her heart would hug her back. When the other children teased her, saying she was talking to wood, she didn't care. The tree never laughed at her. The tree never walked away. Sometimes she brought small gifts, a bright flower, a sweet she saved, even a shiny marble from her pocket. She would place them in a small hollow in the trunk, and in her imagination, the tree smiled and kept them safe. And though no one else could hear it, Binni believed the tree spoke, not in words, but in the sound of leaves brushing together, the creak of its branches, and the warmth of its shade. For years, they kept each other's company, a little girl with too much silence in her life, and a tree that carried more than just leaves on its branches. But time doesn't stand still, not even for little girls and old trees. Binni grew taller, her hair longer, her voice more quiet. One day, her father remarried. A new woman came into the house, kind in front of others, but never warm to Binni. Slowly, her days were filled with chores, fetching water, cleaning, and cooking. Her visit to the tree became shorter. Sometimes she would run past it on her way to the market, only giving it a quick glance. The tree still swayed its branches towards her, but she didn't always notice. By the time she was 16, she was sent to live with an uncle in the city. She didn't even get to say proper goodbye. Her last visit was hurried. She pressed her cheek to the bark, whispered, "I will come back, I promise," and ran. The tree stood still, holding a promise the way it held the carvings on its bark, deep, permanent, and unseen by anyone else. Years passed, the little girl became a woman, and life was not kind. Binni returned to the village one grey evening, carrying nothing but a torn cloth bag. Her hair was sticked with grey, her face lined with tiredness that had nothing to do with age. The city had taken from her more than it had given. Her father was gone, her stepmother nowhere to be seen. The old peepal tree stood at the same spot, older, cracked, half withered, and yet when she saw it, something in her chest tightened. She walked up slowly, her hands trembling. There, her name, still carved deep into the bark. The colored threads she had tied as a child were still there, faded but unbroken. Even the tiny hollow where she had once hidden a folded note still held that scrap of paper, yellowed but brittle. It was as if the tree had been waiting for her. It hadn't moved, it hadn't forgotten. Her knees buckled and she sat at its root, pressing her forehead against the trunk. For the first time in decades, she cried like the little girl she once was. And above her, a branch seemed to lean a little closer, as if shielding her from the evening rain. A few weeks later, Binni woke to a strange sound, metal striking wood. She ran outside. In the small square, men with axes were surrounding the peepal tree. They were cutting it down to make space for a new road. Binni's voice broke as she ran forward. "Stop! Please don't touch that!" The men didn't stop. Chips of bark flew, the sound of each strike like a heartbeat breaking. With every cut, she felt an ache deep in her chest, as if they weren't striking a tree, but something that was part of her. She pressed her hands against the trunk, whispering through tears, "I am sorry, I couldn't protect you." And then, with a final groan, the tree fell. When the trunk was sliced into rings, the villagers saw something strange. Inside the wood, along the growth lines, there was shape, faint but clear. Her name carved deep, the thin grooves where threads had once been tied, a tiny dark hollow where the note was rested for years. Every mark she had ever made was there. The tree had carried her joy, her secrets, and her pain quietly for a lifetime. She had thought she was forgotten, but the tree had remembered everything. The road was built. The place where the peepal tree once stood was now just flat, dusty ground. Binni came there every morning for days, just standing, staring at the empty space. Sometimes she would close her eyes and imagine the shade above her, the rough bark beneath her hands, the sound of leaves in the wind whispering like an old friend. One day, she picked up a small piece of the fallen trunk the workers had left behind. It was rough, with a faint curve of a carved name still visible. She held it to her chest, and for the first time in years, she smiled through her tears, because even though the tree was gone, its memory would live in her, the way she had lived in it. Binni turned to walk away, the wood still in her hands. The sun broke through the clouds for a moment, and she felt as if somewhere the tree was still watching over her. Some wounds fade from the eyes of those who cause them, but in the hearts that carry, will live forever. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to StoryVerse Chronicles, where every tale finds a home. Until the next story, keep a little kindness in your heart.